The shuttle bay of the dreadnought Oblivion's Edge was a cavern of chilled metal and silent, menacing shapes. The human ambassador, a man chosen for his patience and diplomatic acumen, stood at stiff attention. Across from him, flanked by 6 towering guards whose chitinous armor gleamed under the harsh lights, was the commander of the Vrax. She was an imposing figure. Taller than any human, her form both elegant and fearsome. Her skin had the quality of polished hematite, and the smooth, graceful plates that formed her head framed a face of sharp, regal angles. Her eyes, the ambassador noted, were remarkable, large, luminous pools of shifting, molten silver like mercury caught in constant, slow swirl. The peace talks had been on the razor's edge of collapse for 3 cycles. A single misstep could reignite a war that had already consumed 2 colony worlds. The humans' instructions were clear. Be respectful, be deferential, concede on the minor trade tariffs, hold firm on the hyperlane access. Cultural protocols had been drilled into him. Do not touch. Do not offer food. Speak only when questioned. The Vrax valued austerity, clarity, and emotional nullity. The final session had just concluded. A tense, hour-long debate over crystalline isotope rights had ended in a fragile, provisional agreement. As the commander turned to leave, the massive bay doors beginning to cycle open with a deep thrum, the ambassador felt a sudden, overwhelming surge of relief. It was done. The framework was set. The pressure, held in check for so long, needed a valve. He sought a gesture, something to bridge the immense gulf between their species, to soften the rigid formality. His gaze fell again on her striking, ethereal eyes dot as she paused. He took a half-step forward, his voice warm with genuine, unguarded admiration. "Commander," he said, offering a small, human smile, "before you go, I must say, your eyes are truly lovely." The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The silver pools of her eyes solidified into hard, metallic orbs. The graceful plates around her face flared slightly, a physiological response akin to a human paling in shock. Her guards did not move, but the atmosphere in the bay shifted from cold to sub-zero. The silence that followed was not merely an absence of sound, but a tangible, crushing force. "Explain," the commander stated. The word was not a question but a command, flat and devoid of all modulation. I only meant," the ambassador stammered, his diplomatic training evaporating under the sudden, icy hostility. It was a compliment, an appreciation of their unique beauty. Beauty. She repeated the word as if it were a toxic substance. "You comment on a warrior's combat sensors. You remark upon the organs that track targeting solutions, measure threat trajectories, and witness the death of enemies. You call them lovely." She took a step toward him, and he instinctively retreated. "This is not a compliment. It is a profound insult. It implies a weakness, an ornamental purpose. It is a gaze of ownership." The last word was a hiss. It was a cultural mistake, the ambassador pleaded, his mind racing. A terrible, foolish error. In my culture, to remark on a distinctive feature is to offer respect, to acknowledge the individual. "Individual," the commander echoed, the scorn now palpable. "The Vrax are a collective. You see a face. I am a node of the fleet. You have just insulted the node's primary tactical array. The talks are concluded. The agreement is void." She turned, her cloak swirling like a storm cloud. "You will be detained. Your transgression will be communicated to your species leadership. The consequences will be detailed." The heavy doors sealed behind her with a final thunderous clang, leaving the ambassador alone with 4 of the silent guards. Their weapon arms, previously lowered, were now raised and humming with a soft, dangerous energy. He was escorted not to the comfortable quarters he had been assigned, but to a bare, hexagonal cell. The walls were a dull, energy-dampening alloy. No communication was possible. He sat on the single hard bench, his head in his hands. He had single-handedly destroyed peace. He had turned a potential alliance into a possible new warfront, all because of a poorly chosen, heartfelt compliment. A cycle passed, then another. He was given nutrient paste and water, but no word. He rehearsed apologies, explanations, but they all sounded hollow even to him. He had violated their most sacred norm, the absolute separation of functional utility from emotional valuation. To call a weapon beautiful was to misunderstand its purpose. To call the eye of a warrior lovely was to dishonor its every function. On the third cycle, the door to his cell slid open. The commander stood there, alone. Her silver eyes were still hard, but the flare of her facial plates had subdued. She entered, the door sealing behind her. "You are a problem," she stated, standing rigidly in the center of the room. "Your words were an insult. Yet your species' subsequent communications have been illuminating. They have flooded our channels with data, art, literature, biological texts. They insist your words were not a challenge, but a compliment of the highest personal order." The ambassador remained silent, waiting. "My junior analysts," she said, the term seeming unfamiliar, "have reviewed the data. They show that your species' visual organs, while primitive, are also deeply tied to your social and emotional processing. To remark upon them is, as you said, to acknowledge the individual. It is a sign of connection." She paused, her head tilting in a distinctly avian manner. "This is illogical. It is inefficient. It introduces variables into command structures that are detrimental. It is how we are," the ambassador said softly. "It is our weakness, and sometimes our strength. It lets us see beauty in a starfield, not just a navigation hazard. It lets us see potential in an enemy, not just a target." The commander was silent for a long moment. "To see a weapon as art," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "A catastrophic strategic error. And yet," her silver eyes flickered, the molten swirl returning for a fleeting second. "My analysts also presented something. A human artistic concept. A poem. It described light reflecting on water as silver and slow. The description was tactically irrelevant, but it created a sensory correlation map of unexpected clarity." She looked directly at him, and for the first time, he sensed not anger, but a fierce, bewildered curiosity. "You looked at my combat sensors, and you did not see rangefinders or threat indicators. You saw lovely. You saw the silver and the slow swirl." "Yes," he whispered, "this is a form of perception we lack. A dangerous one, but not, perhaps, a worthless one." She straightened. "Your detention is an inconvenience. The insult, while grave, appears to be sourced in a systemic cultural divergence, not a deliberate act of psychological warfare. My command council is divided. Some advocate for your expulsion and the severing of talks. Others are curious." "Curious?" The ambassador dared to ask double quotes about the strategic application of perception beyond the tactical, about understanding an enemy who sees loveliness where we see only function. To understand this is to predict you. To predict you is to engage you more effectively, in peace or in war. It was not forgiveness. It was not warmth. It was a cold, logical recalculation. But it was a chance. "The talks will recommence," the commander declared. "But you will not speak unless directly questioned. You will not offer personal commentary. You will be a vessel for data transfer only. Is this understood?" "Perfectly, Commander," the ambassador said, his relief a palpable force. The talks resumed in the same austere chamber. The atmosphere was, if possible, even more strained. The ambassador followed his orders to the letter. He spoke only to clarify points of law or to read from prepared statements. He kept his gaze lowered, focused on the data slate before him, never letting it wander to the striking silver pools across the table. The discussions were grueling, stretching for cycles longer than planned. Slowly, painstakingly, the framework of the agreement was rebuilt, clause by clause. The human's mistake was never mentioned, but it hung in the air. A ghost at the negotiation table, on the final day, as the last accords were being verified. A minor point of contention arose regarding the linguistic translation of a key term in the treaty. The Vrax linguist insisted on one phrasing, the human legal expert on another. The debate threatened to stall the entire process. The commander, who had been silent for some time, raised a slender hand. All voices ceased. She turned her head, not to the linguist, but to the human ambassador, who had been sitting in quiet observation. "Ambassador," she said, her voice still that flat, modulated tone, "your perception is flawed in matters of combat efficiency. But your species perceives nuance in communication we may overlook. What is your non-tactical assessment of the term?" Every eye in the room turned to him. He was being asked, not as a diplomat, but as a human. He considered the two phrases carefully. One was sterile and precise. The other carried a slight connotation of ongoing mutual benefit. The second phrasing, he said, choosing his words with the care of a man handling explosives. It implies a positive forward momentum, a partnership, however slight, rather than a simple cessation of conflict. The commander listened, her expression unreadable. She looked at the Vrax linguist. The human's assessment has tactical merit. A partnership, however slight, creates a more stable long-term deterrent than a mere ceasefire. Use the second phrasing. The treaty was signed. Later, in the shuttle bay once more, the ambassador prepared to board his vessel home. The come